Hello, reading room. How are you? This is Dr. Annette Feravich, or Miss Annette. I'm moving away from the. Not because I'm not. Never mind. Who cares? Who cares about your stupid title? I do. I worked for it. That's right. I had to call my professors with PhDs Dr. Firestone, Dr. Abby. Do I get the same respect from them? No. Have I heard from them for support? No. Let's get started. We are reading Trevor Noah's book, Born a Crime, Stories from South African Childhood. We're reading 2 chapters each day. Don't forget our message. Whatever is true, just, good, lovely, pure, praiseworthy, meditate on these. Don't you love it? I do. My bookmark for Trevor Noah. I grew up in a black family, in a black neighborhood, in a black country. I've traveled to other black cities and black countries all over the black continent. And in all of that time, I've yet to find a place where black people like cats. One of the biggest reasons for that, as we know in South Africa, is that only witches have cats, and all cats are witches. There was a famous incident during an Orlando Pirates soccer match a few years ago. A cat got into the stadium and ran through the crowd and out onto the pitch in the middle of the game. A security guard, seeing the cat, did what any sensible black person would do. He said to himself, "That cat is a witch." He caught the cat and, live on TV, he kicked it and stomped it and beat it to death with a sjambok, a hard leather whip. It was front page news all over the country. White people lost their shit. Oh my word, it was insane. The security guard was arrested and put on trial and found guilty of animal abuse. He had to pay some enormous fine to avoid spending several months in jail. What was ironic to me was that white people had spent years seeing video of black people beaten to death by other white people. But this one video of a black man kicking a cat, that's what sent them over the edge. Black people were just confused. They didn't see any problem with what the man did. They were like, obviously the cat was a witch. How else would a cat know how to get out onto a soccer pitch? Somebody sent it to jinx one of the teams. That man had to kill the cat. He was protecting the players. In South Africa, black people have dogs. Fufi, Chapter 7. A month before we moved to Eden Park, my mother brought home 2 cats, black cats, beautiful creatures. Some woman from her work had a litter of kittens she was trying to get rid of, and my mom ended up with 2. I was excited because I'd never had a pet before. My mom was excited because she loves animals. She didn't believe in any nonsense about cats. It was just another way in which she was a rebel, refusing to conform to ideas about what black people did and didn't do. In a black neighborhood, she wouldn't dare own a cat, especially a black cat. That would be like wearing a sign that said, "Hello, I'm a witch." That would be suicide. Since we'd moved to a colored neighborhood, my mom thought the cats would be okay. Once they were grown, we let them out during the day to roam the neighborhood. Then we came home one evening and found the cats strung up by their tails from our front gate, gutted and skinned out bleeding, their heads chopped off. On our front wall, someone had written in Afrikaans, "Hex, witch." Colored people apparently were no more progressive than black people on the issues of cats. I wasn't exactly devastated about the cats. I don't think we'd had them long enough for me to get attached. I don't even remember their names. And cats are dicks for the most part. As much as I tried, they never felt like real pets. They never showed me affection, nor did they accept any of mine. Had the cats made more of an effort, I might have felt like I had lost something. But even as a kid, looking at these dead, mutilated animals, I was like, well, there you have it. Maybe if they'd been nicer, they could have avoided this. After the cats were killed, we took a break from pets for a while. Then we got dogs. Dogs are cool. Almost every black family I knew had a dog. No matter how poor you were, you had a dog. White people treat dogs like children or members of the family. Black people's dogs are more for protection, a poor man's alarm system. You buy a dog and you keep it out in the yard. Black people name dogs by their traits. If it had stripes, you called it tiger. If it's vicious, you called it danger. If it has spots, you called it spotty. Given the finite number of traits a dog can have, pretty much everyone's dogs have the same names. People just recycle them. We never had dogs in Soweto. Then one day, some lady at my mom's work offered us 2 puppies. They weren't planned puppies. This woman's Maltese poodle had been impregnated by the bull terrier from next door, a strange mix. My mom said she'd take them both. She brought them home, and I was the happiest kid on earth. My mom named them Foofy and Panther. Foofy, I don't know where her name came from. Panther had a pink nose, so she was Pink Panther. And eventually just Panther. They were 2 sisters who loved and hated each other. They would look out for each other, but they would also fight all the time, like blood fights, biting, clawing. It was strange, gruesome. It was a strange, gruesome relationship. Panther was my mom's dog. Foofy was mine. Foofy was beautiful, clean lines, happy face. She looked like a perfect bull terrier, only skinnier because of the Maltese mixed in. Panther, who was more half and half, came out weird and scruffy looking. Panther was smart. Foofy was dumb as shit. At least we always thought she was dumb as shit. Whenever we called them, Panther would come right away, but Foofy wouldn't do anything. Panther would run back and get Foofy, and then they'd both come. It turned out that Foofy was deaf. Years later, Foofy died when a burglar was trying to break into our house. He pushed the gate over, and it fell on her back and broke her spine. We took her to the vet, and she had to be put down. After examining her, the vet came over and gave us the news. It must have been strange for your family living with a dog that was deaf, he said. What? You didn't know your dog was deaf? No, we thought it was stupid. That's when we realized their whole lives the one dog had been telling the other dog what to do somehow. The smart, hearing one was helping the dumb, deaf one. Foofy was the love of my life. Beautiful but stupid. I raised her. I potty trained her. She slept in my bed. A dog is a great thing for a kid to have. It's like a bicycle with no emotions. Foofy could do all sorts of tricks. She could jump super high. Foofy could jump. I could hold a piece of food out above my head and she'd leap up and grab it like it was nothing. If YouTube had been around, Foofy would have been a star. Foofy was a little rascal as well. During the day, we kept the dogs in the backyard, which was enclosed by a wall at least 5 feet high. After a while, every day we'd come home and Foofy would be sitting outside the gate waiting for us. We were always confused. Was someone opening the gate? What was going on? It never occurred to us that she could actually scale a 5-foot wall, but that was exactly what was happening. Every morning, Foofy would wait for us to leave, jump over the wall, and go roaming around the neighborhood. I caught her one day when I was home for school holidays. My mom had left for work and I was in the living room. Foofy didn't know I was there. She thought I was gone because the car was gone. I heard Panther barking in the backyard, looked out, and there was Foofy scaling the wall. She jumped, scampered up on the last couple of feet, and then she was gone. I couldn't believe this was happening. I ran out front, grabbed my bicycle, and followed her to see where she was going. She went a long way, many streets over, to another part of the neighborhood. Then she went up to this other house and jumped over their wall and into their backyard. What the hell was she doing? I went up to the gate and rang the doorbell. This colored kid answered. May I help you? He said. Yeah, my dog is in your yard. What? My dog. She's in your yard. Foofy walked up and stood behind us. Foofy, come, I said. Let's go. This kid looked at Foofy and called her by some other stupid name, Spotty or some bullshit like that. Spotty, go back inside the house. Whoa, I said. Spotty, that's Foofy. No, that's my dog, Spotty. No, that's Foofy, my friend. No, this is Spotty. How could this be Spotty? She doesn't even have spots. You don't know what you're talking about. This is Spotty. Foofy, Spotty, Foofy. Of course, since Foofy was deaf, she didn't respond to Spotty or Foofy. She just stood there. I stared, cursing the kid out. Give me back my dog. I don't know who you are, he said, but you better get out of here. Then he went into the house and got his mom, and she came out. What do you want? She said. That's my dog. This is our dog. Go away. I started crying. Why are you stealing my dog? I turned to Foofy and begged her, Foofy, why are you doing this to me? Why, Foofy? Why, Foofy? Why? I called to her. I begged her to come. Foofy was deaf to my pleas and everything else. I jumped onto my bike and raced home, tears running down my face. I love Foofy so much. To see her with another boy acting like she didn't know me after I raised her, after all the nights we spent together, I was heartbroken. That evening, Foofy didn't come home because the other family thought I was coming to steal their dog. They had decided to lock her inside, so she couldn't make it back the way she normally did to wait for us outside the fence. My mom got home from work. I was in tears. I told her Foofy had been kidnapped. We went back to the house. My mom rang the bell and confronted the mom. Look, this is our dog. This lady lied to my mom's face. This is not your dog. We bought this dog. You didn't buy the dog. It's our dog. Then went back and forth. This woman wasn't budging, so we went home to get evidence, pictures of us with the dogs, certificates from the vet. I was crying the whole time, and my mom was losing her patience with me. Stop crying. We'll get the dog. Calm down. We gathered up our documentation and went back to the house. This time we brought Panther with us as part of the proof. My mom showed this lady the pictures and the information from the vet. She still wouldn't give us Foofy. My mom threatened to call the police. It turned into a whole thing. Finally, my mom said, okay, I'll give you 100 rand. Fine, the lady said. My mom gave her some money and she bought Foofy out. The other kid, who thought Foofy was spotty, had to watch his mother sell the dog he thought was his. Now he started crying. Spotty, no, Mom, you can't sell Spotty. I didn't care. I just wanted Foofy back. Once Foofy saw Panther, she came right away. The dogs left with us and we walked. I sobbed the whole way home, still heartbroken. My mom had no time for my whining. Why are you crying? Because Foofy loves another boy. So? Why would that hurt you? It didn't cost you anything. Foofy's here. She still loves you. She's still your dog. So get over it. Foofy was my first heartbreak. No one had ever betrayed me more than Foofy. It was a valuable lesson to me. The hard thing was understanding that Foofy wasn't cheating on me with another boy. She was merely living her life to the fullest. Until I knew that she was going out on her own during the day, her relationship hadn't affected me at all. Foofy had no malicious intent. I believed that Foofy was my dog, but of course that wasn't true. Foofy was a dog. I was a boy. We got along well. She happened to live in my house. That experience shaped what I felt about relationships for the rest of my life. You do not own the thing that you love. I was lucky to learn that lesson at such a young age. I have so many friends who still as adults wrestle with feelings of betrayal. They'll come to me angry and crying and talking about how they've been cheated on and lied to. And I feel for them. I understand what they're going through. I sit with them and buy them a drink and say, friend, let me tell you the story of Foofy. That's an interesting lesson, isn't it? I love it. We might love them, but we don't own them. I love you, Stuart. I didn't own you. I acted like I did. When I was 24 years old, one day out of the blue, my mother said to me, you need to find your father. Why, I asked. At that point, I hadn't seen him in over 10 years and didn't think I'd ever see him again. Because he's a piece of you, she said. And if you don't find him, you won't find yourself. I don't need him for that, I said. I know who I am. It's not about knowing who you are. It's about him knowing who you are and you knowing who he is. Too many men grow up without their fathers, so they spend their lives with a false impression of who their father is and what a father should be. You need to find your father. You need to show him what you've become. You need to finish that story. Robert. My father is a complete mystery. There are so many questions about his life that I still cannot even begin to answer. Where did he grow up? Somewhere in Switzerland. Where did he go to university? I don't know if he did. How did he end up in South Africa? I haven't a clue. I've never met my Swiss grandparents. I don't know their names or anything about them. I do know my dad has an older sister, but I've never met her either. I know that he worked as a chef in Montreal and New York for a while before moving to South Africa in the late 1970s. I know that he worked for an industrial food service company and that he opened a couple bars and restaurants here and there. That's about it. I never called my dad Dad. I never addressed him Daddy or Father either. I couldn't. I was instructed not to. If we were out in public or anywhere, people might overhear us, and I called him Dad. Someone might have asked the question or called the police. So for as long as I can remember, I always called him Robert. Well, I know nothing of my dad's life before me, thanks to my mom, and just from the time I have been able to spend with him, I do have a sense of who he is as a person. He's very Swiss, clean, and particular and precise. He's the only person I know who checks into a hotel room and leaves it cleaner than when he arrived. My husband did that. He doesn't like anyone waiting on him, no servants, no housekeepers. He cleans up after himself. He likes his space. He lives in his own world and does his own everything. I know that he never married. He used to say that most people marry because they want to control another person, and he never wanted to be controlled. I know that he loves traveling, loves entertaining, having people over, but at the same time, his privacy is everything to him. Wherever he lives, he's never listed in the phone book. I'm sure my parents would have been caught in their time together if he hadn't been as private as he is. My mom as wild and impulsive. My father was reserved and rational. She was fire, he was ice. They were opposites that attracted, and I am a mix of them both. One thing I do know about my dad is that he hates racism and homogeneity more than anything, and not because of any feelings of self-righteousness or moral superiority. Homogeneity. Homo being not diverse. And that was a vocabulary word in our Bookless classroom. He just never understood how white people could be racist in South Africa. Africa is full of black people, he would say. So why would you come all the way to Africa if you hate black people? If you hate black people so much, why did you move into their house? To him, it was insane. Because racism never made sense to my father. He never subscribed to any of the rules of apartheid. In the early 80s, before I was born, he opened one of the first integrated restaurants in Johannesburg, a steakhouse. He applied for a special license that allowed businesses to serve both black and white patrons. The licenses existed because hotels and restaurants needed them to serve black travelers and diplomats from other countries who in theory weren't subject to the same restrictions as black South Africans. Black South Africans with money in turn exploited that loophole to frequent those hotels and restaurants. My dad's restaurant was an instant booming success. Black people came because there were few upscale establishments where they could eat, and they wanted to come in and sit in a nice restaurant and see what that was like. White people came because they wanted to see what it was like to sit with black people. The white people would sit and watch the black people eat, and the black people would sit and eat and watch the white people watching them eat. The curiosity of being together overwhelmed the animosity keeping people apart. The place had a great vibe. The restaurant closed only because a few people in the neighborhood took it upon themselves to complain. They filed petitions, and the government started looking for ways to shut my dad down. At first, the inspectors came and tried to get him on cleanliness and health code violations. Clearly, they had never heard of the Swiss. They failed dismally. They then decided to go after him by imposing additional and arbitrary restrictions. Since you've got the license, you can keep the restaurant open, they said, but you'll need to have separate toilets for each racial category. You'll need white toilets, black toilets, colored toilets, and Indian toilets. But then it will be a whole restaurant of nothing but toilets. Well, if you don't want to do that, your other option is to make it a normal restaurant and only serve whites. He closed the restaurant. After apartheid fell, my father moved to Hillbrow, to Yeovil, a formerly quiet residential neighborhood that had transformed into this vibrant melting pot of black and white and every other hue. Immigrants were pouring in from Nigeria and Ghana and all over the continent, bringing different food and exciting music. Rocky, I wonder when we're going to have anti-apartheid, or, yeah, when apartheid is going to fall in this country. Rocky Street, all right, that's exaggerating. I get it. Rocky Street was the main strip, and its sidewalks were filled with street vendors and restaurants and bars. It was an explosion of culture. It was, yeah. extremely exaggerated. My dad lived 2 blocks over from Rocky on Yeo Street, right next to this incredible park where I love to go because kids of all races and different countries were running around and playing there. My dad's house was simple, nice, but nothing fancy. I feel like my dad had enough money to be comfortable and travel, but he never spent lavishly on things. He's extremely frugal, the kind of guy who drives the same car for 20 years. My father and I lived on a schedule. I visited him every Sunday afternoon. Even though apartheid had ended, my mom had made her decision. She didn't want to get married, so we had our house and he had his. I'd made a deal with my mom that if I went with her to mixed church and white church in the morning, after that I'd get to skip black church and go to my dad's where we'd watch Formula One racing instead of casting out demons. I celebrated my birthday with my dad every year, and we spent Christmas with him as well. I love Christmas with my dad because my dad celebrated European Christmas. European Christmas was the best Christmas ever. My dad went all out. He had Christmas lights and a Christmas tree. He had fake snow and snow globes and stockings hung by the fireplace and lots of wrapped presents from Santa Claus. African Christmas was a lot more practical. We'd go to church, come home, have a nice meal with good meat and lots of custard and jelly, but there was no tree. You'd get a present, but it was usually just clothes, a new outfit. You might get a toy, but it wasn't wrapped, and it was never from Santa Claus. The whole issue of Santa Claus is a rather contentious one when it comes to African Christmas, a matter of pride. When an African dad buys his kid a present, the last thing he's going to do is give some fat white man credit for it. African dad will tell you straighten up, no, 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 I bought you that. An African dad will tell you straight up. Outside of birthdays and special occasions, all we had were our Sunday afternoons. He would cook for me. He'd ask me what I wanted, and I'd request the exact same meal, a German dish called Rösti, which is basically a pancake made out of potatoes and some sort of meat with gravy. I'd have that and a bottle of Sprite, and for dessert, a plastic container of custard with caramel on top. A good chunk of those afternoons would pass in silence. My dad didn't talk much. He was caring and devoted, attentive to detail, always a card on my birthday, always my favorite food, and toys when I came for a visit. But at the same time, he was a closed book. We'd talk about the food he was making, talk about the Formula One racing we'd watched. Every now and then, he'd drop a tidbit of information about a place he'd visited or his steakhouse, but that was it. Being with my dad was like watching a web series. I'd get a few minutes of information, a few minutes at a time, then I'd have to wait a week for the next installment. When I was 13, my dad moved to Cape Town, and we lost touch. We'd been losing touch for a while for a couple of reasons. I was a teenager. I had a whole other world I was dealing with now. Video games and computers meant more to me than spending time with my parents. Also, my mom had married Abel. He was incensed by the idea of my mom being in contact with her previous love, and she decided it was safer for everyone involved not to test his anger. I went from seeing my dad every Sunday to seeing him every other Sunday, maybe once a month, whenever my mom could sneak me over, same as she'd done back in Hillbrow. We'd gone from living under apartheid to living under another kind of tyranny that was an abusive, alcoholic man. At the same time, Yeovil had started to suffer from white flight, neglect, general decline. Most of my dad's German friends had left for Cape Town. It wasn't seeing me. He had no reason to stay. If he wasn't seeing me, he had no reason to stay, so he left. His leaving wasn't anything traumatic because it never registered that we might lose touch and never see each other again. In my mind, it was just Dad's moving to Cape Town for a bit, whatever. Then he was gone. I stayed busy living my life, surviving high school, surviving my early 20s, becoming a comedian. My career took off quickly. I got a radio DJ gig and hosted a kids' adventure reality show on television. I was headlining at clubs all over the country. But even as my life was moving forward, the questions about my dad were always there in the back of my mind, bubbling up to the surface now and then. I wonder where he is. Does he think about me? Does he know what I'm doing? Is he proud of me? When a parent is absent, you're left in the lurch of not knowing, and it's so easy to fill that space with negative thoughts. They don't care. They're selfish. My one saving grace was that my mom never spoke ill of him. She would always compliment him. You're good with your money. You get that from your dad. You have your dad's smile. You're clean and tidy like your father. I never turned to bitterness because she made sure I knew his absence was because of circumstance and not a lack of love. She always told me the story of her coming home from the hospital and my dad saying, "Where's my kid? I want that kid in my life." She'd say to me, "Don't ever forget, he chose you." And ultimately, when I turned 24, it was my mom who made me track him down. Because my father is so private, finding him was hard. We didn't have an address. He wasn't in the phone book. I started by reaching out to some of his old connections, German expats in Johannesburg, a woman who used to date one of his friends who knew somebody who knew the last place he'd stayed. I got nowhere. Finally, my mom suggested the Swiss embassy. They have to know where he is, she said, because he has to be in touch with them. I wrote to the Swiss embassy asking them where my father was, but because my father is not on my birth certificate, I had no proof that my father is my father. The embassy wrote back and said they couldn't give me any information because they didn't know who I was. I tried calling them and got the runaround there as well. "Look, kid," they said, "we can't help you. We're the Swiss embassy. Do you know nothing about the Swiss? Discretion is kind of our thing. That's what we do. Tough luck." I kept pestering them, and finally they said, "Okay, we'll take your letter, and if a man such as you're describing exists, we might forward your letter to him. If he doesn't, maybe we won't. Let's see what happens." A few months later, a letter came back in the post. "Great to hear from you. How are you doing? Love, Dad." He gave me his address in Cape Town, in a neighborhood called Campus Bay, and a few months later I went down to visit. I'll never forget that day. It was probably one of the weirdest days of my life, going to meet a person I knew and yet did not know at all. My memories of him felt just out of reach. I was trying to remember how he spoke, how he laughed, what his manner was. I parked on his street and started looking for his address. Camps Bay is full of older, semi-retired white people, and as I walked down the road, all these old white men were walking toward me and past me. My father was pushing 70 by that point, and I was so afraid I'd forgotten what he looked like. I was looking in the face of every old white man who passed me like, "Are you my daddy?" Basically, it looked like I was cruising old white dudes in a beachfront retirement community. Then finally I got to the address I'd been given and rang the bell. And the second he opened the door, I recognized him. "Hey, it's you," I thought. "Of course it's you. You're the guy. I know you." We picked up right where we'd left off, which was him treating me exactly the way he treated me as a 13-year-old boy. Like the creature of habit he was, my father went straight back into, "Right, so where were we? Here, I've got all your favorites: potato rosti, a bottle of Sprite, custard, and caramel." Luckily, my taste hadn't matured much since the age of 13, so I tucked right in. While I was eating, he got up and went and picked up his book, an oversized photo album, and brought it back to the table. "I've been following you," he said, and he opened it up. It was a scrapbook of everything I had ever done. Every time my name was mentioned in a newspaper, everything from magazine covers to the tiniest club listings, from the beginning of my career all the way through to that week. He was smiling so big as he took me through it, looking at the headlines. Trevor Noah appearing this Saturday at the Blues Room. Trevor Noah hosting new TV show. I felt a flood of emotions rushing through me. "I'll cry for you." It was everything I could do not to start crying. It felt like this 10-year gap in my life closed right up in an instant, like only a day had passed since I'd last seen him. For years I had so many questions. Is he thinking about me? Does he know what I'm doing? Is he proud of me? But he'd been with me the whole time. He'd always been proud of me. Circumstance had pulled us apart, but he was never not my father. I walked out of his house that day an inch taller. Seeing him had reaffirmed his choosing me. He chose to have me in his life. He chose to answer my letter. I was wanted. Being chosen is the greatest gift you can give to another human being. Being chosen is the greatest gift you can give to another human being. Once we reconnected, I was overcome by this drive to make up for all the years we'd missed. I decided the best way to do it was to interview him. I realized very quickly that that was a mistake. Interviews will give you facts and information, but facts and information weren't really what I was after. What I wanted was a relationship, and an interview is not a relationship. Relationships are built in the silences. You spend time with people, you observe them and interact with them, and you come to know them, and that is what apartheid stole from us. Time. You can't make up for that with an interview, but I had to figure that out for myself. I went down to spend a few days with my father, and I made it my mission. This weekend I will get to know my father. As soon as I arrived, I started peppering him with questions. Where are you from? Where did you go to school? Where did you do this? How did you do that? He started getting visibly irritated. What is this? He said. Why are you interrogating me? What's going on here? I want to get to know you. Is this how you normally get to know people? By interrogating them? Well, not really. So how do you get to know people? I don't know. By spending time with them, I guess. Okay, so spend time with me. See what you find out. So we spent the weekend together. We had dinner and talked about politics. We watched Formula One racing and talked about sports. We sat quietly in his backyard and listened to old Elvis Presley records. The whole time he said not one word about himself. Then as I was packing up to leave, he walked over to me and sat down. So he said, in the time we spent together, what would you say you've learned about your dad? Nothing. All I know is that you're extremely secretive. You see, you're getting to know me already. And that is the end of our 2 chapters. We're going into part 2 of our book, Trevor Noah, Born a Crime, Stories from a South African Childhood. What an awesome book. What an awesome memoir. Just well written Trevor Noah. That's prose. Everyday language is what we have there. Thanks so much for joining me here on our 3 days on in the classroom. This is Miss Annette. It is day 366. It is June 25th, and we are rolling into our 4 days off. I hope you have plans. I think I'm going to do a little shopping. I've done some shopping, spent a little money, but I don't spend a lot of money. So this thing is like 20 years old. It is. It is. So, Dr. Annette Feravich, Miss Annette, I am here in the classroom as the teacher, as a positive health psychologist, always working to make your mind or suggest, not make it, but suggest a healthier mind, a healthier body, a healthier spirit. Thanks for joining me.